This is week 3 of the Advent Conspiracy. We're conspiring, we're joining together to do something this Advent season, this season of preparation, that is a little subversive, a little countercultural, and what we're conspiring to do is to celebrate Christmas the way it was intended to be celebrated, to give gifts to the right Christmas. And we talked a couple of weeks ago when we started this out about the two different paths, the two different roads there were to be taken in this Christmas season. And they're both calling to us in very different ways. The one is well paved and beautiful and brightly lit and lots of brilliant sounding music and all that sort of thing. And it tells you to spend more money because more equals better. And your loved ones will really know you love them if you give them more gifts that cost more money, and the more expensive the better, and all that sort of thing. And then there's another path that is calling to you in a much softer voice. The ground is probably a whole lot dirtier. It might be a dirt path. It might be a little smelly. At least the destination is, because the destination is a manger, a feeding trough where a baby was laid, and we believe that that baby changed the entire world, everything. And celebrating down one path or another look very different. And that was the first week. And last week we talked about spending less, that you are being told a Christmas message. You're being asked to worship, really, this whole idea of giving more to retailers who can offer you fulfillment and relationship and can really prove your love for your loved ones. This brings us to week 3. And this scripture is the basis really for all of our giving. And this week is give more. How do we give more? Give differently. This is John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Everything came into being through the Word, and without the Word, nothing came into being. What came into being through the Word was life. And life was the light for all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not extinguish the light. The Word became flesh and made His home among us. We have seen His glory, the glory like that of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So this morning, I want to tell a little truth. I want us to tell truth to one another. So let's tell the truth. We have received some pretty impersonal gifts for Christmas, haven't we? Some gifts that really don't mean anything at all. I can remember the very first gift that was opened one Christmas when I was a kid, I don't know how old, and we had these rituals around giving the gifts because it was all about the gifts. And the first ritual was we had to give a present to Dad and get a present for Mom, and they would open them together. And I don't remember what what my dad opened, but we gave the gifts to the two of them, and my mother unwrapped this box and pulled out a frying pan. Merry Christmas. And she looked at that frying pan and said, "Oh, Doug, I love you." No, she didn't. You know she didn't. She took that frying pan out of the box and said, "Really? A frying pan for Christmas? What does this mean? What does this communicate? Honey, make dinner?" I don't even know. I don't even know. What it really communicates is I was walking around. We needed a frying pan in the kitchen, so I thought I'd get a frying pan. This is the beginning and end of the wonderful gift. I love you, honey. Honor our relationship. Merry Christmas. Frying pan. But if we're being honest, I think we can be honest and say that not only have you received some pretty impersonal gifts that I bet if you sat there for just a second and thought about them, you could remember that gift, the crock pot or the tie you didn't need, the sweater, the whatever. But if we're telling the truth, we give some pretty impersonal gifts too, don't we? I remember the year I gave my sister the troll dolls, you know, the little hunks of plastic that have the hair sticking up on them. I don't even know if they were popular, but I know they were cheap. And my sister liked pink, so I got her a troll with pink hair coming out the top of it. Or the year that I just got her the Barbie doll, the cheapest one that was on the rack, the one that was on clearance because nobody else wanted it. And that took me all of 5 seconds. It took me the drive time to the store, and then I walked out and said, what's the cheapest and most meaningless thing I can buy? And you bought it. And you give it, and if you stop and think about it for even a second, I bet you can remember when you did exactly the same thing. When you went to J.C. Penney, you can go to the mall today, they've got a rack that says, give gifts that matter. And it has a huge novelty liquor flask in there. Give gifts that matter. And it's got, you know, some like back scratcher and then like a light you can put on your head, because that will really communicate how much you love somebody, is the big novelty liquor flask. That's helpful. That's going to make the world a better place. But we do this to each other Christmas after Christmas. We check off the list and go through it twice, and we get ourselves things that are meaningless, and they end up in the back of the closet or up in the attic or in the garage just collecting dust because they're so god-awful you can't even re-gift them. And you feel guilty throwing them out or putting them to the curb because somebody gave it to you and you're supposed to love that person, and so maybe you give it to, I don't know, some charity organization because maybe somebody wants that big old huge flask. I don't know. But why do we do that? Why do we buy into the myths, the lies that we talked about last week, that more is better, and that if you just spend more money, your loved ones will know that you really love them, or the number of presents, the more presents, the better. The taller the stack of presents around the tree on Christmas morning, the more excited your kids will be, the more close-knit your family will be. Why do we buy into that year after year when we know it's not true? We know it's a lie. And I believe that you know intuitively that sermon didn't even need to be preached last week, that you hear this stuff and you know as a Christian that just can't possibly be the best way to celebrate the birth of Jesus. I believe you know that. But I also know that if we just tell you to say no to all of that, you get nervous and you get anxious because you've never tried to celebrate Christmas a different way. And if you do, what'll happen? What will happen? What will the kids think if you don't have a 3-foot wall of presents around the Christmas tree on Christmas morning? And what will your friends think if you don't give them a gift or you give them something different? Or will people even get it? Will Christmas even be fun anymore? Because that's where the fun is, isn't it? And the good news is that nowhere in the Advent conspiracy am I going to tell you to not give anybody gifts. I want you to give gifts this year. What we're asking you to do and challenging you to do is to say no to the retail lie and to say yes to a different way of giving, a much better way of giving that really does make Christmas better because it's closer to the heart of what Christmas is supposed to be. Because let's face it, the best gift you've ever received in your life was a personal one. And the worst gift you've ever received or given was an impersonal one that didn't say anything. Well, it probably did. It probably said, I really am not thinking a whole lot about you, but I felt obligated to give you a present, or I picked your name in the family hat drawing, or you're my secret Santa at work, and so here it is. But, you see, when you look at Jesus, when you look at the birth of Jesus, the birth of Christ, the entrance of the Messiah into the world, you don't see any of that impersonal attitude. Just getting it done, just making it happen because that's what you have to do, or because we're obligated to give, and so we're going to give this thing. You see just the opposite of that. You see the most carefully thought out, beautiful, personal gift ever given. So if you want to give a different kind of gift for Christmas, a gift that says no to all of that wrong stuff, all the less helpful stuff, and says yes to all the stuff that makes a difference, you have got to start with this story. You start with what we call the incarnation. The incarnation is just a churchy, fancy way of saying God in the flesh. What we read from John chapter 1, the Word made flesh, that God came among us and dug in beside us and became us, felt our hurts, experienced our anxieties and our worries, felt our pain, our emotional pain, our spiritual pain, our physical pain. That is the story that's at the core of Christmas. And it's there in all the stories if you read them. In Matthew chapter 2 that you heard Liz read, it says at the end, after it gives all the logistics of how it happened, it says this was to fulfill what was said through the prophet Isaiah. Look, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and you will name him Emmanuel. And Emmanuel, that word in Hebrew, means God with us, or God is with us. God's beside us. We're together in this thing. It's personal. God cares. And then that John chapter 1 reading said the Word became flesh and made his home among us. This Jesus who was with God at the beginning, who all the universe, the stars, the galaxies, everything, the intricate beauty of the world, poinsettia plants and fir trees and people, all were created through him who has this immense power and glory, and he took all of it and was willing to be this feeble, broken us. And Paul says it in Philippians chapter 2, Jesus, who was in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing. He made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a human being, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. This is the core of Christmas. This is what it's about. So imagine taking the core of that Christmas, that God is with us, that God gave us the gift of Jesus, and Jesus was with us and one of us and took on everything that it means to be human. All of it. And what if you made that the pattern for your giving to other people? What would that look like? Because when you look at God's gift of Jesus, there is no doubt. There's no doubt whether or not God loves the world. Yes, God loves the world. You can tell by the gift. There's no doubt whether God cares or whether God's thoughtful or God knows you or any of these things. Of course God does. Look at the gift that was given. And then when you look at the gift of Jesus, you look at his life, there's no doubt. There's no question. He is 100% fully committed to this relationship and to making that relationship grow and thrive. And so how can we pattern our giving so that there's no doubt? So that when that gift is pulled out or experienced, there's no question in the person's mind receiving the gift that you love them deeply and that you're thinking about them and you have been reflecting on them. You know them and that you are committed to that relationship. I can only speak from my experience. And I've experienced the impersonal gifts, but there have been a handful in my life that have been this give more concept perfectly done. And the best gift I've ever received in my whole life, and I don't even remember if it was for a birthday or Christmas, but I got this card, a handmade card from my mom that it was all Buffalo Bills stuff, which is nice because I like the Buffalo Bills, and it's a painful thing, but it's who I am. And we got the card, and it said in the card, "You're going to the Bills versus the Vikings." Well, what had happened is my wife, I talk about all the time how I used to go to Buffalo Bills games with my dad as a kid. And the first game I went to was when I was 7 years old. It was the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Oilers. 7 years old, and we sat in the end zone, just my dad and I. And from that point forward, from 7 years old until I went to college at least, we went to a game every fall, just one game, my dad and I, to see the Bills play. And win, lose, whatever, it was just awesome to be with my dad and to have that experience. And so my wife had gone behind the scenes and had called my parents and said, I would like to send Josh and Cade, my son, to go to a Buffalo Bills game with Doug. And that's what happened. So my wife had pulled the strings and called my dad, but here's the thing about it, because you're probably thinking, wait a second, this is spend less, right? But football tickets are expensive, and this game is in New York, and at the time you were living in North Carolina, and that's a pretty expensive trip up there, isn't it? We got the tickets for free. My dad just asked around. Anybody have season tickets? And we took tickets to the game nobody wanted to go to, the Minnesota Vikings, that nobody cares about. And so the tickets cost nothing. And then the airfare, it was Spirit Airlines, who flew from Myrtle Beach to Niagara Falls. And here's the kicker, Summer didn't go because it wasn't for her. It was just me and Cade. And so it was $100, like a little over $100 for both of us to fly to New York. And so it was actually relatively inexpensive. And my dad and me and my son sat together at a Bills game that my son still talks about. It's still the highlight of all sorts of things. And it brought together all these sorts of things. It built the relationship between my wife and me, my dad and I, my dad and my son. It was amazing. You see how that's a different kind of gift? And the best gift I've ever given, I got straight from the Advent Conspiracy Manual. And I mean that. I didn't come up with the idea. It's in the book, Advent Conspiracy. My mom was having kind of a rough season in life. And so I called up a bunch of people who were close to her mom, her sister, her brothers, her dad, her husband, my sister, and a bunch of her friends, and asked them all to take one page and write a story. Why do they love my mom? Why do they appreciate my mom? And if they wanted to add a picture, they could, or some piece of artwork or a poem or whatever they wanted to do. It's their page. And they all sent me these different pages, and I just took the time to put them in a scrapbook. And then I mailed it to my mom. And on Christmas morning, that's what she got. Page after page after page of why people loved her and what they thought was special about her and why they wouldn't want their lives to be without her in them. And that morning, I'll be honest, I was very proud of that gift, and I called her expecting to be told how wonderful I was. Oh my gosh, this is the best Christmas gift ever. And I said, how did you like your gift, Mom? And she said, oh, it was okay. It was good. I said, man, you got to be kidding me. That was the best. It was the best thing ever. Didn't cost me hardly a dime like the cost of postage, because I even had a friend hand make the scrapbook. So, well, that didn't work out. Until we were together this past Thanksgiving, and we were talking about doing the Advent Conspiracy and gifts that we'd given and different things, and my mom said, oh, that scrapbook. I looked at it just last week. I know right where it is. And she talked about how awesome it was because her mother has died between when I gave her that scrapbook and this year, to go back and read the page that her mom wrote about her. Why I love you, my daughter. Because these gifts, they become more and more valuable as the time passes, because they're given the way that Jesus gave. And there are some really good objections to doing it this way. And one of them is, oh my gosh, that sounds really elaborate and like really hard to pull off. And it worked out just perfectly in all scenarios, right? Well, here's the thing. If you give gifts this way, even if you fail, it works out. Like this book right here, this is the complete English works of a poet named George Herbert. And it says inside, I opened this up on Christmas morning, 2003. It says, "Merry Christmas, darling. I love you. Summer." And I was with my parents. She was in Georgia. And I opened it up. I said, "Who the heck is George Herbert? Why did she buy me this book? I don't know who this is." And I called her up. "Merry Christmas, honey." She said, "How did you like the book?" I said, it was good, because we'd only been dating a little while. "Oh, yeah, it was great, great. George Herbert's fantastic. He's an awesome guy. Who is he, though?" And she said, "That's your favorite poet." I said, "No, it's not. It's not my favorite poet." And she said, "No, it is. I talked to my friend Kat, who was in your speech class in seminary, and you recited one of his poems in your speech class." And I said, "No, I didn't. That was Robert Frost." So I have a wonderful book, The Complete English Works of George Herbert, that I have never and will never read. And it's one of the best gifts I ever got, because it came from a place where somebody was investing in the relationship. And another valid objection is, "Josh, you haven't even talked about kids." Because kids need stuff and they love stuff, and you heard them up here. They want robots and things that move and entertain them and whatever. Okay, cool. You know what? We did all of our shopping yesterday, my wife and I, in our bed together online. And it took us 20 minutes, and we did it. But here's the deal. You can. Yes, because, see, last year we got our son this football. It's a Nerf football. At Toys R Us, it cost, I think, $14. And this was his big gift last year, was the football. But look at this thing. It is beat all up. You want to know why? Because every possible moment that I'm not doing something or on the computer or working or somewhere else, he says, "Dad, can we please go outside and play football?" And we go outside and throw the football. $14 has provided a year's worth of memories that will mean something more when they're thought about. It'll mean something forever. So is this thing worth much? Absolutely not. It's a hunk of foam. But even that hunk of foam can mean something if it's given in a certain way. Like this book, Go Dog Go. It's 33 years old. It says on the inside, and parents, if you're buying stuff for your kids, write notes. They become more and more valuable over time. But this book, it says, "Happy 3rd birthday, Joshua." It was the 3rd birthday present. Look at the thing. It's beat all up. Why? Because I read it on my parents' lap, and then I got to read it to my kids when they were sitting on my lap, and hopefully they'll read it to their kids while their kids are sitting on their lap. Because this little book, who knows how much it cost, the value of it, because it builds the relationship. And the thing is, you don't need 10 books or 5 footballs. So if you've already bought the Hatchimal or the robot or the who knows what else your kid wants, just stop. Just stop there, because more isn't better. And the more gifts you get, the less valuable each one of them becomes. But if you get that one gift that builds that relationship, or the 1 or 2 gifts, each one of our kids this year is going to get 2 presents from us. 2. And if you want at the door, not because this is being recorded for all the people in the world at YouTube, I'm not going to tell you, but if you want at the door, I'll tell you what we're getting them. But every one of the gifts is intentionally purchased to connect, to build relationships, and they force us to spend time with one another. They're not gifts that can really be truly enjoyed on your own. They require us to invest our love and our time in somebody else's life. And really, that's why our church is doing this habitat thing. We're asking the question, what would it look like if our whole church gave like Jesus, if we followed the pattern of the incarnation? And So you look for areas to build relationships, because as a church, who do we say that we love and we're connected with? We say we love Albany. We love the community of Albany and the people in it, especially the poor or the downtrodden or all these sorts of things. And this past year, two different people, two donors, gave us pretty sizable gifts, and the only strings they attached were, please use these to make Albany a better place. And so at the beginning of this year, starting in January, one obnoxious elder, at every stewardship and finance meeting we had, every session meeting we have, he would open his trap and tell us, we have got to use this money. We got to use the money. We got to use it now. We have to do something tangible that we can send to those people and say, look, your gift has made a difference, and all that sort of thing. Yeah, we blew that guy off. And then in June, that obnoxious elder got the job as the executive director of Flint River Habitat for Humanity. And actually, he stopped talking about it at that point. Well, maybe not. That's a conflict of interest. But then this thing started brewing, and there's this great opportunity to do a home, and you get a little excited about it, and you start to kind of float it to the elders, but then that fell through. And so, okay, let's not worry about it. And in the meantime, I had decided to do the Advent conspiracy, and this whole idea of spending less and giving more, and there's a special project as part of it, and I knew that, but nobody at the church did. And the week, I decided on Monday that I'd do Advent conspiracy. On Wednesday, I got a call saying, there's another house. There's another house. Could we do it? So I don't know. So we floated the idea in October to the session, and we talked about it. And then again, at the November meeting, we floated it, and we talked about it. And then we had a special meeting to go through the logistics and talk about it and say, is this us? Is this the pattern? And decided, you know what? It is. This is exactly us, and this is exactly Jesus, because Jesus is God with us. And one translation of John chapter 1 says, Jesus moved into the neighborhood. The Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. So why don't we move into the neighborhood and build the neighborhood? And that project, if you've been on it, it forces us to invest in the relationship that we say we have. And so when you give this way, when you give relationally, whether it's to the people you love or a church giving to a community, there's no doubt about the love that's there, and whether or not you care, and whether or not you're thinking about the other person or the other people or the other community. There's no doubt. And these gifts, they will never find their way to the back of the closet or to the attic or the garage or whatever. They will always mean something, and over time they will grow more and more valuable. And so, one more time, I'm challenging you to say no. I'm challenging you to give a firm no to the retail giant's message. I'm asking you to say no to the lie that more is better. I'm asking you to say no to the myth that the more money you spend, the more people will know and feel your love. It's not true. To say no to what people are telling you, that if you buy this product, it won't. It's an empty promise. It's a broken promise. But at the same time, I'm challenging you to say yes. To say yes to a completely different way of celebrating Christmas. And it may feel crazy, and you may have lots of questions because you've never done it this way before. But I promise you that if you embrace it and you try it out, just give it a shot, your Christmas will be better. And not only your Christmas will be better, but so will everybody else's. This Christmas, we're giving you the chance to say to yourself and to everybody else that you believe that Jesus' birth changed everything. That Jesus changed your life, that Jesus' birth changed the way you celebrate Christmas, and that you believe that Jesus' birth can even transform our community. And if we work at it, the world. Just imagine what could happen if all of us took that chance. Amen.